Hi, I'm Megan Lester, and I decided to read The Life of Pi by Jan Martel. Jan Martel was born in Spain. His parents were Canadian graduate students, which is an interesting fact when it comes to the novel. He obtained a degree in philosophy. He only began writing full-time at the age of 27. Before then, he did odd jobs. His first book was a collection of short stories, and his first novel followed, but they didn't give him much recognition. Even though he has won many literary awards, he only soared to fame with the Man Booker Prize for Fiction in 2002 for his novel Life of Pi. A general summary of Life of Pi: it's the story of a young Indian man who survives for many, many months in a lifeboat with a tiger. His family, his older brother, his father, and his mother live in India, and they own a zoo. After they decide to sell their zoo and move to Canada, their ship is sunk by a storm, and Pi survives by being thrown overboard into a lifeboat. When he's in that lifeboat, after the storm has settled, he realizes that he is in there with a couple animals, one of which being Richard Parker, a tiger from his zoo. He and Richard Parker actually grew up together. He and the tiger go on this survival together, and eventually they realize that they're all each other has, and that each other is what pushes them for that survival. With the main character being Piscine Molitor Patel, he's Indian, and one of the main characteristics of him is he actually practices 3 religions: Christianity, Hinduism, and Islam. Over the course of his life, he has went through many changes, the first of which being his name. His name Piscine was actually, he was teased for that in school, and so he changed it to Pi, which is a reference to the number pi, 3.14, and that number is an irregular number, and it's been said that pi is an irregular character, so the reference works. In the novel, he is first introduced as a grown man living in Canada, and he is recounting his story of survival for a man known as the author. Pi is very deep in his faith. He practices these 3 religions from childhood to adulthood, and his deep faith is what compels him to survive, even though he has to go against his faith and his beliefs in order to survive, such as his belief of vegetarianism. In many instances, Pi has to resort to eating animals and supposedly eating human flesh to survive. The second major character is Richard Parker, which is actually the Bengal tiger that he was a resident of the Pondicherry Zoo, which was owned by the Patel family. In the main beginning, in the zoo in India, Pi believes that the tiger has some humanistic characteristics, such as basically humanity, and the father has always warned Pi that that is not true, and he shows him the true nature of the tiger by letting him devour a goat. And this is important because when Pi finds himself with the tiger, he remembers his father's lesson about the true nature of the animal. But also, Pi uses his humanity to save Richard Parker in the beginning and allow him onto the lifeboat. After a while, Pi gains some kind of dominance over Richard Parker using some methods, and he's seemingly tamed by Pi. Other noteworthy characters are Pi's father, Santosh Patel. His main lesson to Pi is about the true nature of the tiger. Pi's mother has encouraged him and supported him in his decisions to practice multiple religions. And Pi's older brother, Ravi, is just really known for teasing him throughout the story. He doesn't really play intricate part. Another noteworthy character would be this Mr. Adiru Basami. He is a patron in the coffee shop, and he tells the author that he will introduce him to a man with a story that will make him believe in God. And the author is the man who interviews Patel in his adult life that allows him to recount this story of his survival. And there are two Mr. Satish Kumars. One is a biology teacher and the other is a Muslim mentor, and they are crucial in Pi's development in his early childhood of religion and his intelligence. The novel is seemed to be written in first person. It seems that the narrator is Pi Patel recounting his story. However, the first person narrator is unreliable due to not being the truth. In first person, the narrator can lie, embellish, forget, or misremember details of their story. And also throughout the novel, the author that begins interviewing Pi chimes in from time to time with his notes. The reader realizes that the author is actually recounting Pi's tale as it was told to him, and therefore it is not actually in first person rather than the author recounting the tale in first person. For some time it seems as though the author is an actual character. That is because Jan Martel and the character of the author have striking similarities, and throughout the novel until really the end, the readers can believe that Jan Martel, the author of the book, is actually the author character in the book and is basically recounting his interview. However, the readers realize that this is a fictional person, the author, telling of a fictional experience. So Jan Martel does a good job at making that confusion. Basically, the plot of the book is after his childhood, he adopts 3 religions and practices them all of his life. He has many struggles related to those religions, but his mother supports him, and those religions eventually lead to his survival. He's a vegetarian and a nonviolent person, but after the sinking of the ship, he is left aboard this lifeboat with all these animals, and after the death of the zebra, orangutan, and the hyena, Pi Patel and the tiger Richard Parker are the only ones left alone. He uses his resources and creates a raft that he uses to distance himself from the boat, and he realizes he must tame the tiger to take place on the boat for his survival. And then he uses a whistle and the tiger's seasickness to eventually gain a dominance. They survive for 227 days after the death of the other animals. After he takes into account all of his supplies, his provisions, he realizes that he needs to keep Richard Parker alive so that he may remain alive. If he doesn't give Richard Parker food and water, the tiger will attack him and eat him. After not being rescued by a passing freight ship, Pi expresses a great love for Richard Parker, realizing that he has lost all of his family and this tiger is all he has at the moment. At one point, they both go blind. Pi's blindness results in his madness and hallucinations. He then determines that he's been having conversations with Richard Parker. These conversations are mainly about food. Pi is telling all these fruits and vegetables that he can't wait to eat, and then in his mind there's someone else chiming in talking about brains and innards and meat and all this stuff, and Pi believes it to be Richard Parker, but it's really Pi's own mind going against himself because he's in that survival mode. And then there's a part where there is another lifeboat and a blind Frenchman, and Pi invites him onto his ship, but the guy tries to kill and eat Pi, but the guy's eaten by Richard Parker. And once Pi regains his eyesight, he is horrified at the carnage but takes advantage of the situation, eating small amounts of the man and using the rest for fishing. They then, Pi and Richard Parker, come on an island that's dominated by plants and meerkats. Richard Parker is able to go back to his natural state of a predator and eat his fill of the meerkats and regain his strength, and he spends his nights in the lifeboat. Pi is able to return to his vegetarian ways, and he spends his night in the trees. He was thinking he was peeling a piece of fruit, and he kept pulling back the layers, and it revealed a human tooth, and he realizes that the island is a predator, and that anything on the ground or below it is consumed by the island. He decides to take Richard Parker and leaves, and this is a pivotal moment in the story because he could have very easily left Richard Parker, and at many times during the novel he could have left Richard Parker, but he just does not. At the end of the story, he's rescued and interviewed. Richard Parker runs away, and his rescuers do not believe him, so he offers a different version. He says there were people on the lifeboat. Him, his mother, a French cook, and a crewman. The crewman had a badly injured leg, and it was amputated. After the death, the French cook noted that he only cut the leg for bait. Pi's mother was outraged and made him leave the ship and get on the raft. The French cook then decapitated Pi's mother and threw her head to him on the raft. Pi then stabbed the French cook to death. So this results in the crewman as being the zebra, the French cook as being the hyena, Pi's mother is the orangutan, and Pi Patel is actually Richard Parker, the tiger. Which is very interesting and makes you question the whole story. The major themes that I decided that were very pertinent to the book is faith and religion, because those are the things that begin Pi's tale and allows him to survive, is because he never loses sight of his faith and his religion. Hope and hopelessness, because he always has hope that he will be rescued even when the situation is hopeless. He has hope for Richard Parker because in many instances he could have left him to die or simply just left him, but being the person that he is, Pi is hopeful that Richard Parker will allow him to survive too. And also pushing oneself past their limits when it comes to Pi and his nonviolence and his vegetarianism, when it comes to killing animals and eating their meat and eating the meat that of the Frenchman that Richard Parker killed. So pushing oneself past their limits is really a major theme of the book, and that comes with survival. My overall assessment is, yes, I know I wasn't supposed to have read this before, but it was a long time ago. I read it as a 12th grader in high school, and then I read it now as an adult. And I would not consider this a young adult novel. Many of the themes, like religion and the sheer need of survival that is explored in this novel, is interesting for young adults, but many young adults do not have the life experience to really grasp the meaning of the things that's going on in the novel. Yes, I enjoyed it the second time around. With that being said, as a high school student, as a young adult, I did not enjoy it the first time. It seemed like a lengthy read with a little bit of action, and that was it. What worked was the narrator, which was also interesting and confusing, the character of Pi Patel, and the second half of the book, which was where all the action after the shipwreck was. What did not work for me was the first half of the book, and I guess that's biased from when I read it the first time. The first half of the book is a really slow read where you kind of got to just read the details over and over. And Pi Patel's second story, To the Authorities, it worked, but it didn't work because, it makes you question the whole book. Yes, I do recommend this book. No, I would not teach it as young adult literature. I would teach it at above the high school level. But I did enjoy it, and I do recommend that you read it. And it is much more interesting than I have described it.